And we're back at the DynaGen TG410 controller, or the TG350 controller, depending on which Aurora generator you have. Just wanted to show you some configuration settings here on the switched inputs, on the inputs on this controller. For automatic generator starting, we use switched input C on this controller. It's got a bunch of inputs, and one of them is labeled C. You don't have to worry too much about that, but I just wanted to show you something here. Make sure the generator is off. Press enter to get into the menu. Switched IO, and I'm going to go to switched in C. Once I'm in this menu, I'm going to go to function, switched input C. I want that to be start and stop of the generator. There's a little check mark beside there. Don't go selecting something else by mistake, or if you're in a menu and you can't get out, there's no back option. Make sure you find that little check mark and select the same thing in order to get out, so you're not changing the configuration here. So this is what I want people to be careful of when they go into the menus, when there's no back option. Look for what is highlighted, what has got a check mark beside it. Select the same thing so you're not accidentally changing something. The active mode, when should switched input C, when should the controller pay attention to it? Right now it's locked to global all the time. Pay attention to it all the time. I don't want to change that, leave it the way it is. What happens? What triggers switched input C? When is switched input C taking an action? It's taking an action when it is connected to ground, when it's closed to ground. You can change it and make it closed to battery, meaning it's connected to battery. So when do you pay attention to switched input C? When should something happen? When it's connected to battery, when it's connected to ground, when it's connected to battery or ground, or when it's open, floating, nothing connected to it. Majority of situations, everybody's transfer switches are going to work by closing the connection to ground, making that switched input C connect to ground. So that's what we're leaving it at here. That's where we want the check mark, and that was the trigger function. There are other inputs and outputs, and I don't want to mess around with them, but let's look at B, just to give you an example. It is an event. Switched out B is an event. There's a star beside it, not a check mark. Let's see what that is. I can't tell. Let's look for a check mark. There's a check mark. It's glow plugs. So switched out, what was that? Switched out B is glow plugs. Don't want to change something by mistake. There is a back option here, so I can do that. But if I wanted to change it, instead of glow plug, it was something else, I'd highlight the function, press enter. Don't go changing it. Let's go back here. And that was for switched output B. Again, any menu you get into and you can't get out, make sure you select what's already checked.